In this video, I'm going to be talking about SOHCAHTOA, the American Indian princess. It's just an imaginary one, and this is just an acronym that's used to help us find the trigonometric ratios, sine, cosine, and tangent. What this is it has to do with right triangles. So let me draw a right triangle, and we're going to put a right triangle. So suppose we label it as A, B, and C. This ratio is used, say we're going to say either we can use either angle A or angle B. The sine of angle A is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. The cosine of that angle is equal to the adjacent over the hypotenuse sides, and the tangent is equal to the opposite over adjacent sides. I'm going to put some sides in so I can show you how to use this formula. So let's start with a 6, 8, and 10 triplet. And I'm going to start by writing down O, H, and A. These are the opposite, the hypotenuse, and the adjacent. So relative to this angle A, this is the opposite side. This is the hypotenuse. The hypotenuse is the longest side across from 90 degrees. The longest side is always across from the biggest angle. And this is the adjacent. So let's start writing these different ratios. So the sine of A is equal to the opposite over the hypotenuse. S stands for sine. So you don't put O over H, you actually put in these values, 6 over 10. And the cosine of A, we're on the CAH one, cosine of A, we're over here, is equal to the adjacent side, which is 8, divided by the hypotenuse. And lastly, the tangent of A is equal to the opposite over the adjacent, or 6 over 8. And I'll show you how to use your calculator. I'm on a PC right now, and if I'm on the view, the scientific view, and I'll clear it, and even if you're using a Mac, they do have a scientific view, and it's very similar. So let's go find how to find the degrees for angle A. So you take 6 divided by 10, and the sine of A formula is actually, to find this A, the inverse sign would give you A. So you take the inverse, sine -1, and A is about 37 degrees. This is rounded up to the nearest whole number. And let's check this with the cosine formula. So you take 8 divided by 10, and you do the inverse function. I'm always in degrees, cosine -1, and it's about 37 degrees as well. And let's do the tangent one. So you take opposite over adjacent, 6 divided by 8, and do the inverse tangent, tangent -1, and that's 37 degrees. I have some problems on the board for different types of uses for the SOHCAHTOA to find one of the missing sides of a triangle given one of the angles. So let's try this right here. I'm going to write down our formula. So I'm going to write it. I usually sing it because I really love this formula, this acronym, SOHCAHTOA. So this is 3 feet, and this is x. We're going to try to find out how many feet x is. So relative to the angle 48, you only label the ones that are here. You don't label any other things. You don't need to label the hypotenuse. You could confuse yourself. This is the opposite, and this is the adjacent. So you go over to your formula, and you see O and A is tangent. So the tangent of 48 is equal to the opposite side. You don't put the O and the A, you put what they stand for, 3 divided by x. So we're going to solve for x by cross multiplying. I'm going to put a 1 over here, and cross multiplying means that these two multiplied together equals this multiplied together, or 3 is equal to x times the tangent of 48. Dividing both sides by the tangent of 48, x is equal to 3 divided by the tangent of 48. So I'm going to take my calculator, and how to solve this is I'm going to first find the tangent of 48. I write down 48, and I just hit the tan button, and it's 1.11. So I'm just going to put an arrow and say this is 1.11. So 3 divided by 1.11 will give you my answer, which is 2.7 feet. And now let's try the next example. So this time I'm still write down the formula, and I'll type it. So, I put all caps. SOHCAHTOA, and I'm going to label the missing parts. So we have, this is the hypotenuse because it's across from the 90 degrees, and this is 25 degrees, and this is the opposite side. We don't have our units, but we're going to try to find out how long the hypotenuse is. And so we're going to have an O and an H. This is the sine. Sine of 25, and it's 25 degrees, is equal to opposite 125 divided by the hypotenuse, which is C. Cross multiplying, C times the sine of 25 is equal to 125. Dividing both sides by the sine of 25, we have C is equal to 125 divided by the sine of 25 degrees. So let's calculate that. So I'm going to take my calculator, 25, and hit the sine button, and that's 0.423. So it's equal to 125 divided by 0.423. So let's calculate that. 125 divided by 0.423 is 295.5 units. And it should be longer than this opposite side because the biggest side is always across from the biggest angle, which in this case is the hypotenuse. Do another example. I wrote down the formula SOHCAHTOA this time, and now we're going to label what we have here. This is the hypotenuse, and this is adjacent side. So we go to our formula, and we have adjacent and over hypotenuse, so we're going to use the cosine. Cosine is written COS. Cosine of 64 degrees is equal to the adjacent 3 over x. So we're going to cross multiply. 3 is equal to x times the cosine of 64. And dividing both sides by the cosine of 64, we're going to get x is equal to 3 divided by the cosine of 64. And so let's go find where the cosine of 64 is real quickly. 64, and hit the cosine button, is 0.438. So x is going to be 3 divided by 0.438, or 6.89 units. Okay, I hope you enjoyed this video, and thank you for watching.